You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
The views expressed by the individuals during this broadcast are their own opinions, and they may not be the same as those of their group or other organizations they may be involved with.
All medical advice during our broadcast is not a medical opinion and should be checked with your medical physician.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to V.A.C. Roundtable number 83 as we continue to our discussions with people who we respect and have been helping the veterans community as a whole. We're interviewing one of our own today, which is a gentleman who would years ago worked for Harborside, and has been in the medical cannabis space for over a decade. And he has been contributing. He originally had an organization called Operation EVAC, now called Compassionate Veterans. And we would like to welcome the one and only Venerable Ryan Miller. Thank you for joining us today, Ryan.
Thank you so much for including me. Glad to be here.
So I'm just gonna get right into the brass tacks of things. This first question is kind of a multiple answers, because it's how did you originally come to cannabis? So give us multiple examples, such as when did you originally hear about cannabis? When did you get turned on? And when did you realize it was going to become your life's work? So it's kind of a three-parter.
Yeah, that's a great question. First, I just want to thank everyone for being here now, just showing up. I believe sharing space is sacred, and we will never have this moment ever again. So thank you so much for arriving. I'm here on occupied Muwekma and Ramaytush Ohlone territory, otherwise known as Palo Alto, California, not too far down the road from Wade. My pronouns are he, we, and comrade. Yeah, I'm just really grateful to be here. I do want to apologize to any elders that I'm speaking before. I'm just a simple human being doing my humble best. I was introduced to cannabis probably about 15 years old. Of course, didn't probably feel it much at first, but continued the practice and learned how to feel good and feel better with the help of cannabis. I used it throughout high school as a big part of my coming of age, big way of socializing with friends, making friends. There was a time actually, the first time I tried cannabis was where my dad lived in Vacaville. And I got some weed from a friend out there, brought it back home to my Bay Area where my mom's family's from, and we're smoking weed on this camcorder. People are taking video. This was before the camera phone. And somebody asked me hey man, where'd you get this weed? And I said, I got it from Vacaville. And they were like, Vacaville? Who's getting weed from Vacaville? And so for a big part of my life, that became my nickname. A lot of people know me as Vacaville. But yeah, I used cannabis throughout high school. I also used a whole lot of alcohol throughout high school. And certainly that didn't go away once I got to the military. And I had to cheat on my urinalysis to enlist in the Marine Corps. There was a product called V.A.C, V-A-L-E''S, and it was effective at the time. It worked well. I got in. Didn't use cannabis at all during active duty, but did drink a whole lot of alcohol. I got meritoriously promoted twice. I was the company and battalion Marine of the Quarter at one time. And I also had 2 alcohol-related NJPs, non-judicial punishments. And it really kind of just eliminated the possibility of that being like a career path for me. So I decided to get out. I got out as a like Microsoft certified Microsoft certified systems engineer, Cisco certified network associate, and I got discharged here to like larger Silicon Valley, which seemed to be an optimal, military experience and training to convert to the civilian equivalent. But the majority of my friends were like blue collar folks, garbage men, electricians, plumbers. I didn't have any really network in tech, and I had a lot of social anxiety. So it really prevented me from having the skills to like network. I remember I went to a veterans in technology meetup in San Francisco. I had to have 3 drinks at the bar before I could even approach the networking group. Me and another Marine ended up closing out that bar, went to another bar nearby, closed out that one. And so, yeah, this was a big part of the difficulty transitioning, I think, which can probably, leads us right into that next question.
And with that, I will go to Councilmember Tony Landry for our next question. Tony.
Hey, good evening, everyone. Thank you, Ron, for being here. I've always been a fan of you, following you on Facebook and everything. And it's great to see you going through the transition. And that's my question's about it. Can you tell us about your transition from the military and how you started EVAC to your current company?
Yeah, thank you. And Tony, it's mutual. I'm glad that we've been able to connect through this, and I've always been super impressed with you from this and like Jose Belen's group. I think I remember you being involved with that. So it's always been a pleasure, Tony. Much respect, much love. My transition, I was 98 to 02 in the Marines, and I was data communications 4066 at the MOS. It was pretty good. When I got out, I went right to like community college. That's actually, the first semester I took sociology, and Professor Salinas at Chabot College in Hayward really helped me kind of have a more societal lens of the world, and how social forces shape individual outcomes, which I guess I can just leave it at that for now. But I worked a lot of retail work, did like retail management for like 8 years for FedEx office. It was Kinko's before that. And that like consultative sales experience really helped me learn how to sell weed. And so I worked at a dispensary in unincorporated Alameda County in Ashland called A Natural Source as a bud tender. And this was like, we just had big jars of weed on the counter, and we weigh it out right in front of them. And it was fantastic. It was remarkable to be able to like earn money in a somewhat protected way. It was certainly a risk in those days. And that dispensary was shut down. And then I applied to Berkeley Patients Group, and I got to work really alongside some of the smartest, amazing people. It was the first time I worked with like multiple transgender folks, and they were fantastic. And it's really where I learned about compassion through their Helping Hands program. And for folks that aren't in California, compassion in the context of California cannabis is this tradition of the free, non-commercial exchange of donated cannabis products to low-income folks, really sick folks, veterans. The origins from it were from a lady named Brownie Mary and an Air Force veteran, Dennis Perrone, that helped really like gay AIDS patients in San Francisco alleviate, a lot of their pain and suffering. So that's like the roots of compassion. And that's where I learned about it at BPG through their Helping Hands program. BPG sadly got shut down. broke a lot of people's hearts, including mine. And from BPG, I didn't apply for unemployment. I didn't apply to any other jobs, but Harborside Health Center. I got right in there, Harborside. And Harborside, while it was a health center, had a reputation for providing like free holistic services to the community. They did acupuncture, Reiki, massage therapy, yoga, herbalism. And I was the team lead for the clones department. We sold a lot of plants and seeds at the time, where the co-founder, Dave Weddingdress, invited me to start a support group for veterans. I didn't have any experience at the time, no training. I just happened to be a veteran, I guess a decent, cannabis guy. And at the time I was dating a PhD, and we had already kind of discussed some programming. So I accepted the invitation, partnered with a brilliant meditation practitioner, Jane Leonard, who also worked at Harborside. And for 2.5 years, we created Harborside Heroes, where monthly we would meet and have a discussion prompt. All I distributed mostly was a topical product called Internal, which was External, which was a topical spray, non-psychoactive, and a tincture called Internal, that was a full cannabinoid spectrum, but primarily THCA. So it was mostly non-psychoactive also. And that's mostly what we distributed. We got a couple of other donations from generous, farmers. And in 2016, I left Harborside. And that's when I created Operation EVAC, educating veterans about cannabis. While I was at Harborside, Relief in San Francisco was another dispensary. They wanted to, me to help them start a support group there, but Harborside wouldn't allow it at the time. So they were the first dispensary that I started with when I left Harborside in 2016. So I went from doing this once a month for 2.5 years to 4 times a week, two in San Francisco for Relief and the Apothecarium, one in Oakland at Magnolia, Berkeley again with Etienne at Berkeley Patients Group, 7 Stars in Richmond, and A Perfect Union in Sacramento. And I would, collect cannabis from farmers all over the state, store it at my mother's house, weigh it out in little baggies before, jumping on my bicycle and the BART train all throughout Northern California or on the Amtrak to go to Sacramento. What else can I say about that? Yeah, it was really, cannabis helped me get to, a better mental health experience. I don't think we've kind of dipped into that. We'll probably get into that maybe at some point. But really helping out veterans really helps me even, accelerate my mental health recovery. So it's really been a big part of my, identity, coming back to the civilian world as that guy that can help support veterans. So, yeah.
That's quite a journey. I want to say we were very happy that Harborside followed the BPG model regarding, free resources such as acupuncture, massage, and we had Chinese herbalists as well. Unfortunately, not all did. I was very happy because Steve had been an early mentor to me and the Cannabis Action Network, and for him to come in 7 years after and open Harborside, we wanted to make sure that the compassion that, as you stated, Dennis Perone had established was carried forward. And just to clarify, unfortunately, DPG was shut down in 2012. And Ryan was unfortunately one of the 50+ people I had to lay off when the government shut us down. So we were fortunate to stay open, and we're still open to this day. But when we downsized, we were not able to go back to those original services just because space didn't allow for it. So I just wanted to clarify that. Next up will be Councilmember Michael Davis with our next question. Councilmember Davis.
Yeah, hey Ryan. I think that is important, what you said, uh, about improving your own mental health, being a veteran and helping out. I'm a veteran also, and I think that, through cannabis and, helping, other veterans and just helping out, through like my photography and trying to help out through that way is also kind of help my mental health out as well. And I feel like through this activism and, through the Veterans Action Council, my mental health has significantly improved as well. And I think that, this is something that, veterans, more veterans should seek out. And I thought I would just mention that real quick before I ask you your question. So I'm glad
Yo,
that you mentioned that.
and if you don't mind, like I love that you're involved in art, and it's a couple of questions later, but it's been a big part of my transformation also. And I just think like art therapy is super real and important for veterans
Mhm.
to take practice, tap into the creative part of our brains when we've really been trained to engage the destructive parts.
Absolutely. Yeah. Um, your question that I have for you is what inspired the transition from Operation EVAC to Compassionate Veterans? And then how does that new name reflect the organization's missions and goals?
Yeah, this is a great question too. So, um, Operation EVAC, educating veterans about cannabis. My co-founder, Taryn Buxton, who was also a Harborside employee that left and started Oakland Extracts with a Navy veteran, Aaron Tran, came up with that name. And our logo was like a helicopter, and the EVAC was like stencil, militaristic kind of lettering, right? And pandemic kind of really changed our practice. We used to meet in all those cities, like I said, 4 times a week. And we shut down and went to Zoom. At one point in San Francisco, we'd have like 85 troops show up to our meeting. And our online practice, the most we've had is about 35. So the digital divide is been devastating, absolutely. But we have been able to kind of rebuild in terms of having access to veterans in, I think, 14 states now. We've had an active duty Marine join our support groups from a barracks room in Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. He also logged in while he was on deployment. I don't want to say where, but it was in Eastern Europe at the time. So we've gone international. We have a Canadian veteran that joins us. And we've had troops join us from like their bedrooms, the hospital beds. So while we can't replace, that in person at the time that we did, having the access and the accessibility for folks was really a big thing. But compassion was like banned with Prop 64 in 2016, and we had to lobby for like 3 years to get it, to make it happen, essentially. We had a bill that passed the Assembly nearly unanimously, the Senate nearly unanimously, and then Governor Brown vetoed it. And it really like devastated me, broke my heart. I thought about, self-immolation at the time. I called 988 and they didn't know what to do because self-immolation is not a, stress or depression related. It's a political act. So, long story short, I guess, was, one of our first distributions, because we meet online 3 times a week and we meet up 4 times a year to distribute the maximum daily limit. In our partnership with Recompass, who's a fantastic organization, Nicole Redler, Max Weiss, really helps get that off the ground and really makes it so I don't have to use my mom's garage and kitchen table to store this stuff anymore, which is a huge lift. And so we had given away the most product we ever had, 8 ounces. I even gave away an ounce from the traditional market on the side. I think we were giving away some microdose mushrooms from a generous distributor, Galaxy Labs, who was also founded by Marine Recon vet. So I've given away the most product I ever had. And some people even said, hey, is there any coffee? Snacks would be nice. Is this all we get? And I went from that distribution to a couple days later, I went to a Vipassana, a 10-day silent meditation retreat. And I just kind of like, you're meditating 12 hours a day, 13 hours a day. And I was just kind of ruminating on this experience. I'm having my own kind of spiritual awakening in a lot of ways. And that's kind of when it hit me. One, to show this evolution from harborside heroes, which I think hero worship is problematic, particularly in the context of the American military. Operation EVAC, it was brought to my attention from a member of About Face, Veterans Against War. His name's Ali. Told me, hey man, you might want to look at your logo if anti-war, anti-imperialism is important to you. And I was like, ooh, at first I got real defensive about it, and then I was like, damn, he's right. I had to kind of like humble myself. And so I had this idea, compassionate veterans, one, let's simplify it. EVAC, educating veterans about cannabis. It's an acronym, takes another layer to kind of interpret. Compassion is what I wanted to center on in terms of this culture of cannabis redistribution and donation of free, medicine for folks, and really kind of shifted into this mission and goals about the next part. And because I've been doing the suicide prevention thing for like a decade, and redistributed hundreds of pounds of cannabis, had 1,500 or so support groups, right? And while our community is doing fantastic, the larger veteran community is not. Like the suicide thing is not getting any better. These forever wars aren't going anywhere. So it kind of made me zoom out and think about too, like the American veteran, we suffer, right? Because of our experiences, our proximity to state violence. Also, like that other person on the other side of the battlefield also suffered. Like this is what compassion is about, is like putting ourselves in the shoes of the other, actually kind of learning that there is no other. Like we are one, right? And so I do want to like capture the attention, the resources, support this veteran community, and I also want to see how we can build bridges to refugees and survivors of American militarism. See how we can heal each other's PTSD and grief and achieve forgiveness and restoration and reconciliation towards, peace, liberty, liberation, justice for all.
Well stated. Next will be Council Member Laughter. Wade, you're recognized.
Wow, Ryan, I gotta say, this has been an amazing conversation so far. I'll just do a quick recap of what I remember. We started off talking about your time in the Marine Corps and your issues with alcohol. And somehow, yeah, you made a transition from alcohol into cannabis that led you into not so much a commercial slice of the cannabis work, but a compassionate side of cannabis. And I was fascinated by your way of stretching the definition of compassion. And I liked what you said. I've always thought of compassion as what a lot of people are capable of walking a mile in someone else's shoes and feeling what I call empathy for their situation. But compassion is when a person who experiences that empathy decides to do something about it, to act, to make a difference in the world. And I see you, Ryan, just one up one side and down the other. I love it. I feel like you might have already answered the question I'm going to ask you, but I'll throw it out there and let's see what you come up with. Can you share the most transformative moment in your life journey and how it shaped your mission today? Thank you, brother.
Damn. Yes, thank you so much, Wade. Appreciate that. I kind of touched on the mental health piece a little bit before, but let's go there a bit into the darkness, if you will, for a moment. I did get out in 2002. I was doing okay, community college, retail work, whatever. In 2004, Pat Tillman was killed, and he was from San Jose, California, and went to Arizona State University, and then played for the Arizona Cardinals as I think a defensive player, defensive back, and quit the NFL to join the Army, and became an Army Ranger and was killed in Afghanistan. And it really kind of struck me, right? Because here I had these aspirations to become like a tech bro and make a lot of money and stuff, when I left the military, and it really wasn't working out so well. And then this guy had this example. It really showed me, because he had that material success and he sacrificed that to serve and what he, believed in. And then as I got to learn more about him, I went to his funeral here in San Jose. It really had an impact on me. I learned how kind of critical he was of the war, and how he had an appointment with, I think, Noam Chomsky, who I was really encouraged that got involved with the Veterans Action Council at one point. And so it kind of really invited me to start looking with a more critical lens at these things. And there's something that was happening too at this time, when I would self-identify as a veteran. I deployed to Okinawa, Japan was where I was stationed at, deployed to Brunei, Bali, Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore, Philippines, Hong Kong, Thailand, Australia, Korea twice. I'm a shellback, if the sailors know what that's about. But when I got home, everyone was only interested in Iraq or Afghanistan. And so it really made me feel like I didn't do enough. I didn't get the combat action ribbon. I didn't get the combat deployment. I didn't get a Purple Heart. Didn't come home in a flag-draped coffin. And this narrative of unfulfillment led to inadequacy. Well, and that inadequacy was also further influenced by the pogue shaming that we have in the Marines. Pogue is person other than grunts. Maybe you've heard of rear echelon mother effer. Maybe you've heard of FOBIT, forward operating base, person that didn't go beyond the wire, so to speak. Like, 'cause at the top you'll have like the dead, then you'll have like the Purple Hearts, then you'll have maybe the special operators, the grunts, and then, you know, me, the non-combat, non-infantry. I'm a 0%, right? Veterans' guilt for not doing enough is not a disability qualifying condition. It is a form of PTSD, veterans' guilt, but not according to any sort of disability rating benefit. So basically, like, the most transformative moment was when I smoked the venom of the Sonoran desert toad. And this is 5-MeO DMT. I think about 2014. No, excuse me, 2018. 2018. And so I'm in the Mendocino forest. If anybody's heard of Swami, he's a popular, California cannabis farmer, spiritual leader, awesome dude. I was on his land in the middle of the Mendocino forest. I was on these cushions, tapestries, surrounded by the forest. The 5-MeO, you inhale it for 10 seconds, you hold it for 10 seconds, and then as I exhaled, I died. I dissolved. My ego was released, and it was the most relaxing, pleasant, beautiful experience of like surrender and bliss. And I white out, so I can't see anything but just this warm white light. And I'm just bathed in this comfort, like the womb. And in my peripheral vision, I could see like ink in water, like a little darkness over there. And so I made this like, let's go dark decision. And that warm white light transferred immediately to this dark, cold, scary, terrifying, uncomfortable, like horrific experience. And I'm like writhing on these mattresses, regretting that go dark decision. And I'm just like, release, relax, allow, release, relax, allow, just trying to talk my way through it. And at one point, my finger trembles on the mattress on my outstretched arms, and a little bit of light comes through in that blackness. And I tap my finger a little more light. Now I start like slapping these mattresses, more and more light, pow, 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 pow. And I'm awake, I'm reborn, and I'm connected to everything. The trees, the birds, the bugs, the people. And I look at the facilitators, I felt this, wow, like this is why you do this. I like took my shirt off. If my belt buckle would have been manageable, I would have been naked. And then I feel this divine love that was precisely curated for my specific need. And I could feel around me pipe hitting, door kicking, commandos, snipers, all surrounding me, like providing watch and care and concern and love for me. Just me. And I felt like that's hard work. That's not easy work to do, to provide that cover and concealment and security and Overwatch, and that love informed me that I could let go of that backpack of guilt that I didn't do enough. It kind of informed, I try to tell them like, hey, you guys can go off duty now. Like, I'm good, thank you. And it made me feel like, oh shit, I got this sensation like it's my responsibility to help other non-infantry, non-combat veterans feel like you're enough, worthy, lovable, complete, whole, just as you are. Let that just soak in a little bit before I go to that next transformative experience that I had was at last year's Veteran Art Triennial in Chicago. And this was multiple exhibits throughout the city that curated American military veterans, Native American artists, and Iraqi artists. And its intention was to commemorate the 20-year anniversary of the illegal and immoral 2003 invasion in Iraq, and to illustrate that the modern forever wars are rooted in the Indian wars that were right here on Turtle Island. The counterinsurgency tactics were learned here against like elders, women, children on the genocide here in America. So at the end of this art exhibit in Chicago, I witnessed a Native American person smudging an Iraqi artist. And I just really like struck me like this sacred experience, both these two victims of American militarism, separated by opposite sides of the earth. And he's offering like prayers, like healing prayers with the sacred sage medicine. And it really just converted this guilt that I had for not going to Iraq or Afghanistan all the way to gratitude that I avoided staining my family lineage in this dishonorable imperialist experience, which probably leads into the next question.
Probably does.
You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
Camelford Lifestyle Shop, open Monday to Friday from 10 till 7 p.m. or by chance. Check out our flags, our t-shirts, plus our hats, and look of that supply of rolling papers, plus much more. We've got bongs and your favorite herbal vaporizers. Look at all the incense we have, as well as for those who collect knives, check out these knives in our collection. And while you're here, stop in to see Shay at the piercing room, where you can get poked by Shay. Daily deals, check them out. Camelford Lifestyle Shop, 17 Bridge Street West, Camelford, Ontario.
When you have a pain that's reached its peak, Legacy for 20, it's so unique. If organic cannabis is what you seek, here's your trusted partner 7 days a week. Suppository salves, vapes and drops, topicals, edibles, infused pop. Just when life seems like it ain't easy, at Legacy 420 enjoy a pop freezy. Lab tested products make them the GOAT. Legacy 420 out on your road. Legacy 420 in Tyndonega Mohawk territory. Indigenous organic cannabis at its finest.
What do you find at paceradio.net? People advocating cannabis education.
Limestone City Hydroponics is Kingston, Ontario's hydroponics shop. Take your growing to the next level and create the optimal environment with a tent kit, or maximize your yield with an ebb and flow flood table kit. Either way, Limestone City Hydroponics has more sizes and options to fit your needs. Are you looking for the power of the sun that adapts to your budget? Then look no further, as they have professional grow lighting. They have indoor grow systems that are easy and cost effective, with many options to fit your living space and lifestyle. Cultivate your growing potential. We have everything you need to succeed. And if you can't make it to the store, they offer local delivery to the greater Kingston area. Remember, when you're looking for experts to help you grow, then look no further than the locally owned Limestone City Hydroponics, 105 Sunderland Drive in Kingston, Ontario. Call them at 613-548-0420. Rerolled Saturdays. Check it out. Nothing but non-stop cannabis and psychedelic programming. Find it at 420pace.ca.
You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
With that will be Council Member Leslie Free. Council Member.
Thanks, Etienne. Ryan, I love everything that you're saying. I mean, I love that you're bringing up the self-responsibility and accountability in relationship with working with the divine and these medicines, because it's all of it. So my question is, what lessons can the broader wellness and veteran communities learn from Indigenous traditions in their approach to healing?
Ooh, this is such an important question. And I also want to state that I'm no expert. I'll likely make mistakes in what I'm going to say, and I apologize to anyone who I might offend. I was first exposed to Native American traditions on Alcatraz in about 12 years ago. I think it was my first time I went there. On Alcatraz was occupied in the 70s by Native folks. They just took it over for a couple of years. And every year on Thanksgiving holiday, there is a sunrise ceremony. And I've been going that year over year with a childhood friend of mine for about a decade. And that's where I was really like introduced to spirituality, a lot of different social movements, Palestinians being one of them, would show up and speak there. And then in 2016, I deployed to Standing Rock, North Dakota, for the Indigenous water protection. There was a Veterans for Standing Rock was a GoFundMe that raised like $1 million. Wesley Clark Jr. was the guy that organized it. And we bussed in from all over the country. And I had experience peacefully protesting on the streets of Oakland and San Francisco, first for like anti-war, then for anti-police brutality. But that was my first experience with prayerful protesting. And, you know, on our way out there, Obama stopped the permit for the pipeline. And so that was like a success. And so it was like an answer to prayer for a lot of people. And the action that we took, the march that we had, was, you know, really a spiritually transformative experience. And that whole sort of pilgrimage was spiritually transformational. So I went there as like an atheist, and I returned as a prayerful person. Since then, I've been going to a Sundance ceremony for the past 5 years in North Dakota. And so I think like primarily we can learn a lot, right? But primarily relationship to spirit, relationship to land, and relationship to like cosmology and like orientation, where we think in terms of the tribe, right? The collective. And we think also in terms of like 7 generations ahead. So, and for me, that was so important to like have access to an authentic, like American, right? Quote unquote, spirituality. It's such a deep privilege to be, invited to these sacred spaces and these sacred ceremonies. So I think like we can learn a lot spiritually from these ancient ceremonies and practices. In a Sundance ceremony, I was the fire keeper, and one of the prayer rounds is a veteran round. And for one of the whole days is a day for veterans. And that's where the prayer is centered on the veterans. And that was the first time I'd ever been like welcomed home. Like, I didn't expect a parade or anything, of course, right? But I don't even think we had a barbecue or nothing at the house, right? But the first time I was welcomed home in ceremony, in ritual, in prayer, with the whole village essentially praying with me. And so we can learn a lot about how to welcome home our warriors. But something also I've learned about the Plains natives specifically is this less than lethal warfare. Because if you read Roxanne Dunbar Ortiz's Indigenous Peoples' History of the United States, the native folks were horrified at the violence of the settlers, especially in terms of their slaughtering of elders, women, and children, which in native warfare were typically off limits. But there's, in Plains culture specifically, there's this idea of counting coup. And this is basically where you sneak up on your enemy and touch them on the head. And then that person basically owes you their life. And it was basically, I could have killed you, but I showed compassion and I spared your life because all life is sacred. And so a lot of their fighting would be like less than lethal warfare. And so we have this sort of like mythology in America and maybe even Western philosophy that's like, oh, this is just part of human nature, which I think is propaganda, mythology bullshit. So one, like spirituality, relationship to the land, right? If you ever heard of permaculture, that's basically appropriated and rebranded indigenous land stewardship practices. So, and then relationship to each other, right? Mitakuye Yasin, all my relations, we are all related. And then this cosmology of like thinking for 7 generations in the future. And what sort of world are we going to be stewarding, right? Maybe convert from owning to stewarding for the next generation.
Oh, without a doubt. That's absolutely beautiful. I have always followed that and early on adopted that 7 generations to come myself. Because when we were fighting in the dark days of the drug war and we were always hearing it's not going to happen in your lifetime, that would always ring in my ears. If I do this now, 7 generations to come, they will not know my suffering. They will not only will they not know it, they will not even comprehend why it was what it was. And yeah, I have felt a huge healing in that I was able to find for self, but also to communicate to others, because others could then, once you state something as simple, I'm doing this selflessly now, so generations from now they won't experience it. That's a whole other level of comprehension most Western culture cannot comprehend. And no Westerner I know has been, No, 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 no. That's stupid. Everybody has kind of come around to that's like, oh, that's kind of fucking profound, and it's beyond, right? So yeah, I agree. There are many lessons that we can learn from the spirituality, as well as my stepfather, who was World War II combat veteran, only
Yeah.
survived his platoon in D-Day in Battle of the Bulge. And at 88, he was adopted by Quanah Parker's family, and so he did full peyote sweat lodge ceremony, and that was he was gifted full bonnet with all of his medals going down, and the way that the elders and the tribe accept the veteran is they're elevated in a respected space, not in the glorified way that the Western culture seems to parade around, right? Well,
Yeah, man. A couple of things on that, Etienne. You've been a Cannabis before?
yes, yes.
Yeah.
I'll be there next year.
Sagrada Familia,
Yeah,
beautiful cathedral.
yeah.
Been under construction for how long?
140 years will be finished next couple of years.
Right? And so, what was that, Gaudi?
Gaudi started it. It's 4 different artists. Each
Right.
you face is a different artist, but he has the full outside design.
And having that sort of beyond my lifetime mentality. I asked my mom, because we kind of live on the flatlands in San Leandro. Are you worried about climate change? We're not too far from the marina over there, and being flooded. And she said, "Oh no, not in my lifetime." And that's kind of like a lot of the mentality, God bless them, that we've inherited from our ancestors, I'll just say, right? Oh shit. And then the second part of what you said was so important. I wanted to.
I was speaking about my father being in a sweat lodge.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's changed my life. Great medicine. I cry every time in the sweat lodge. Like, it's a beautiful way to pray, like in the dirt, connected to the land, right? And not, the Sagrada Familia is beautiful, right? Beautiful cathedral, but I never felt as close to God and the universe and creator as I have in sweat. So sacred, so grateful to be, and really, like, if there's veterans listening that are curious about this, please tap in. Part of the Chief's vision is a veteran camp. And so tap in. See you then.
Yeah, yeah. My father and my mother were adopted in Texas, so I don't have that privilege, and I would love to experience that someday myself. Next up will be Michael Crowitz with the next question. Councilmember Crowitz, you're recognized.
Thank you, Etienne. It's just so good to see Ryan driving, so hopefully you can hear me well.
Drive safe, brother.
Thanks. It's funny, our good friend, the Mango video, he was out sitting in traffic and sweating, and he was so depressed, and it was just, this endless traffic. And then he realized he had been in a sweat lodge and he was not going anywhere, and he was sweating, and he was very happy. Like, what's the difference? And he realized the only difference was his mental attitude. So he decided to look at that traffic jam as a sweat lodge opportunity, and all of a sudden his mood completely changed. I thought that was the cutest story. And on the second front, I was talking at the Emerald Cup, and I realized we were just being so heavy. I was trying to come up with something positive to say. And I realized that, all these time travel movies, they always, are in fear of doing something as small as stepping on and killing a butterfly, because it might just totally adversely affect the future. And I told everybody, heck, we're doing a lot more than protecting butterflies here. I think that we're making an impact. So thank you for that. And I think the future will tell. So, but my question, if I can get it to come up again, is sort of looking at the future, right? So you emphasize that cannabis and psychedelics are essentially what you called fancy band-aids. That stuck in our brain when you said that. Without addressing the poverty, the draft military industrial complex, how can advocacy and activism better tackle these root issues? What are your thoughts about underlying issues that we're just dealing with the symptoms of?
Yeah, man. Thank you so much for this question. I think it's like really the military industrial complex and like capitalism and imperialism are like the 500-pound elephants in the room that we don't really talk about much as a veteran community. I think it's really important that we have to like center the economic, the political, the historical incentives for how our military is deployed, right? And like I said, I've been doing this suicide prevention thing, right? Because really preventing veteran suicide has prevented my own suicide. And cannabis has been great, right? It's been awesome. Harm reduction approach. It's helped convert troops from some pharmaceuticals, polypharmaceutical approaches to cannabis. That's been awesome. One thing I think that I do want to mention that we made a mistake in the plants over pills approach to our advocacy, trying to destigmatize cannabis. It had, I think, an unintended outcome of stigmatizing folks that do find relief with pills. And I just want to acknowledge that, right? But, being exposed to that sociology class on the GI Bill when I first got out at community college, that was what, 20 years ago, right? Just recently, I finished a master's in counseling psychology, and I learned about this thing called liberation psychology that was founded in El Salvador in the 80s. And I think a lot of us could probably remember what America was doing in El Salvador in the 80s that led to horrific right-wing death squads. And there was a lot of violence. The person that founded liberation psychology, Ignacio Martín Baró, was killed and assassinated by a right-wing death squad. US backed. I like to say that more often, US backed right-wing death squad in El Salvador. But it was essentially, informed by liberation theology. That was basically, we got to do more than pray. We have to take action. So I have to do more than be your therapist. I have to invite you to kind of organize, advocate, speak truth to power, act as an agent of change, but also look at the historical, political, economic, cultural factors that have contributed to your individual outcomes. So I say this because, the socioeconomic poverty draft replaced compulsory service in the Vietnam era draft, right? Where it's tuition rates are so high, unemployment rates are so high. The military industrial complex and the prison industrial complex intersect in the same low-income communities, where those of us based on our privilege or luck avoid the school to prison pipeline. We're funneled into violent servitude to clamber toward the myth of upward social mobility. And if we are recruiting predatorily from lower income communities, kids like me, 50% of us have an experience with childhood sexual trauma. Other, high, I would say, adverse childhood experience scores. So we come to the military, a traumatizing experience from traumatized childhoods often. So this is like the socioeconomic poverty draft, where this huge $1 trillion war machine is fueled by the lowest rung of our social ladders, right? And then the military industrial complex has to be centered not only in this idea of like peace and liberation, but if we want a livable planet. And so like I served capitalist imperialism in the Marine Corps from 1998 to 2002. And the military is the #1 consumer of oil. The majority of toxic Superfund sites are former or current military bases. And we have 1,000+ bases around the world. So any conversation about the environment is hollow unless we center the military industrial complex, which is excluded, by the way, from global climate agreements. The military is not even discussed. And if we really want to get serious about this veteran suicide problem, we have to critically examine unjust intervention just as much as we want to investigate the Afghanistan withdrawal.
A few light things, right?
You feel me? Like,
no, I do 100%. No, I'm just adding a little bit of levity too. Next up will be Tony Landry, recommended for everybody. Mr. Landry, he recognized.
All right. Yeah, it's great conversation flow. I'm enjoying listening to you, Ron. And I'm advocate for psychedelic down here. So this question is kind of along those lines. It says you contributed to reforms in like California's cannabis laws and Oakland's decriminalization of psychedelics. What policy changes do you see as the most urgent to help veterans heal?
Man, thank you so much, Tony, for this question.
All right.
And yeah, like helping change policy is some of my most proudest accomplishments. Like going to Standing Rock, getting arrested in Sacramento, protesting police brutality, getting tear gassed in the streets of Oakland. These are like some of my proudest accomplishments. I got fired from my therapy internship this summer for wearing a keffiyeh bandana to group supervision and then a watermelon t-shirt. I'll take it. Thank you. And when that compassion bill that Governor Brown vetoed broke my heart, it brought me to one of the lowest parts of my life. Right. So I'm curious about this, like veteran involvement in groups like the Veteran Action Council, I believe could lead to improved mental health because you're in a community that's involved in affecting change. The shadow side of that, though, is that what I've noticed in reform style political action, there's more losses than there is wins because it's not really designed for like working class people to benefit. I'm curious if institutions like voting and public comment are anything more than the illusion of proletariat participation. Like, okay, here's your vote. Okay, you have 2 minutes. Get back to work. So most urgent, right? Citizens United. Right? What is a democracy when a corporation can contribute the same amount to a political campaign as an individual human being? Right? When there's no accountability for corporations. Citizens United, the nearly $1 trillion a year out of control defense budget, where they're overpaying for things like trash cans. You could see Google, like I think they're $40,000 trash cans. Let's start there. Let's make it illegal for members of Congress to hold stocks in defense companies. Let's disrupt the general grade officer to defense company board of directors pipeline. And really, let's, give kids from lower socioeconomic communities access to cultural rites of passage to adulthood beyond state violence. Close every overseas base, bring every troop home now. We have plenty of bridges to retrofit, habitats to revitalize, housing to build, whatever. Right here at home. Yeah, Citizens United defense budget and no congressional stock ownership in defense companies, no general to defense board of directors pipeline. See what happens.
I like it. I love it. I want more of it. Well, Ryan,
I love it too.
I want to thank you for your taking the time and the space and sharing your space and wisdom with us about who you are and what you are. I know that you get a lot of grief from all sides because of, for me, I didn't catch the grief as much as it was you were in the military? Like, yeah, sorry, we don't have to, romanticize it and be absolutely, mad about it. But yeah, I'm ashamed of what I did. And, the guys I served with won't speak to me because I say, my Gulf War was over oil, and they don't like hearing that. And they want to, and they have a innate belief to want to believe that what they did was right because they can't face the reality that they weren't right, that they weren't helping people. Because I was one of those, when people say, oh, I wished I had gone to combat, I wish I never got to combat. I hope nobody goes to combat. The thing you teach is you peace, like living and surviving war. It is the most brutal and horrible thing. But you have also taken a different side because you didn't serve, and there was a guilt over that PTS from not serving that a lot. Pardon me, not serving, not going into a theater of combat. You weren't in one of the I's or the A's, right? You were somewhere else. And people forget that there's so many hundreds of thousands of people in the military that never go. Only less than, 3% ever join the military. And even of that, less than 1% ever see combat. And we hope no one else ever does. And I think you're absolutely correct. Let's bring them all home. We can stop building bases in surrounding countries and threatening invasion. And, let's look at ways of, what's frustrating, Ryan, is I love the idea of what you're stating regarding the industrial military complex and stopping the moving of, the generals into the boardroom. But there was a saying when I was a kid, if there were all women in charge of the industrial military complex, this wouldn't be happening. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I humbly invite you to currently go look at the head of all of the industrial military complex companies, and they are run by women. So no offense to anybody, but that mentality that we were going to be much more humble and loving if that were the case has turned out to be a reality far from the reality we're experiencing. Councilmember Davis, you have a follow-up.
Yeah. So as I'm sitting here getting ready to go see Melvin Seals, and I've got some Grateful Dead jamming through my head right now. There's a part of a song, on Grateful Dead, and it says the grass ain't greener and the wine ain't sweeter either side of the road. I would like to think that I'm glad that you've been able to let go of that, that feeling of, guilt of not deploying and not feeling like, you're not good for not deploying. I was actually kind of impressed with the places that you said you did get to go. Those sound like some pretty cool places, man. Um, but I would like to say, as somebody who has deployed to Iraq twice and even went to Afghanistan once as a contractor, that that's messed me up, and I would like to think that there are other veterans who have deployed that would, love to have taken your spot and have not wanted to deploy. There are people that that I know of who had been in 101st Airborne Division, who had, were on a deployment that they were getting ready to rotate back from Iraq, who already had orders to redeploy back to Iraq as soon as they got home. And like, it's just burnout, man. Like, oh my God, was I burnout being in there just from back to back to back deployments. And brother, I think, yeah, things work out for a reason. And I think, I don't know, man, but yeah, that's all I wanted to say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hope this
Well,
discussion helps other veterans see
Yeah.
an example that you have become as someone who has come to that healing, and it helps others heal. You help combat vets and non-combat vets alike heal from all services, and this dumb machismo that is perpetuated through the NFL has a whole month dedicated to propaganda, and the Army Navy game is a sense of propaganda, and I see you posted that, and boy, people really got their undies in a bunch over how dare you say something honest and true that we as veterans see and understand, but the general populace is so blinded by that military drunkenness that they're so high on that oh, I can't wait to thank you for your service. Well, I can't wait to ask you if you were an American worth fighting for. Were you? They don't like that question when it hits them, because they think, oh, I'm going to get him with this one, and it's like, oh shit, am I an American worth fighting for? What did I do? I turn it back on them, so it makes that contemplation inward, because I felt that was something I've always for. Well, thank you for your service. Well, what are you thanking me for? You didn't engage me about what my service was, or if I am proud of my service, because there's a lot of shit that says I served and I'm proud. Well, I served, I'm not proud, and that's
yeah,
okay.
brother.
you know
This is important, man. And also, like, service to whom exactly? My freedom ain't got shit to do with Iraq or Afghanistan or AFRICOM,
Nope.
right? Like, service for the shareholders of the military industrial complex, service to capitalist imperialism. Like, let's be like real. And I think, like, whether it's combat, non-combat, brother, like, I'm sorry you went to Iraq, and I'm glad you made it home. You know what I'm saying? Like, we don't have to have this pissing contest if we take these unjust and immoral interventions off the American exceptionalism mythological propaganda pedestal that they undeservingly enjoy.
Bathe in it, revel in it. I mean, it's a sickness that we as veterans have to watch from the inside out, right? Because it's hard to unconvince, and if you wear something military, oh, thank you, that's incoming, and this isn't a complaint at the American public as much as understanding the perspective that we've been forced to experience because we chose to do this. Right. We didn't expect this. We didn't expect 10% off it. We didn't expect free dinners and lunches at Arby's on Veterans Day and shit like that. That's not what we served. We served to care, to help, and what we ended up finding is that, yeah, I served oil companies. I served industrial military complex. When my first firing of rounds into Iraq was a brand new top secret copperhead round that was brought in just for us to fire and deal with, that we shot hundreds of, that cost millions of dollars you have no fucking idea about. And guess what? That's going to be the first one replaced, is that new expensive stuff, not the World War II gunpowder I was using in my artillery, the rounds from Vietnam, and my howitzer that was built during Vietnam. You know what I'm saying? So just the understanding of that exceptionalism. We were humbled because I served alongside the French Foreign Legion, and everything they had was made by the highest bidder. And they wouldn't trade anything with us because everything that was from us was made by the lowest bidder. And as far as they concerned, was crap. So we got it from either side, even from our international friendlies. We were shamed because of the representation we're supposed to have as the big bad Americans, and that we're just cheap secondaries to everybody else. And that was humbling to experience, as a soldier, being there.
And it's important, I think, to include in our narrative of this GWAT experience is Fallujah is now the world's epicenter of birth defects. 5 million innocent Iraqis were slaughtered, and there were no WMDs to be found. Hussein had nothing to do with 9/11. Deadly Betrayal, Why America Invaded Iraq, is a book written by Fritz, I think is his last name. I think he's a 28-year military veteran. I've just ordered it. And I think we gotta have these tough questions. I think us GWAT veterans, we can learn a lot from the Vietnam veterans that threw their medals back. And it's our moral obligation to really discourage recruiting, especially for women, right, that are at high risk of military sexual trauma without any accountability, any prevention. I'm curious if rape can ever be separated from war.
No, these are hard truths that we as soldiers, and as we were talking, the Native Americans and the old tribes, we were welcomed back as elders and as understanding because of what we had experienced. But we don't have, the society has not given us the love and the shelter that the tribes have and given. And I think a lot of us got lost after the wars or even when we served, because we were not embraced by our communities, nor did our communities know how to embrace us.
Right. And Etienne, one thing I do just want to mention, because that struck the memory of what I wanted to say earlier, is you're right. In Native American culture, American Indian culture, veterans are at an elevated part of society and honored. And I think it's important to apply discernment between indigenous cultures of warriorhood and imperialist militarism. And we have to disentangle these two that have been conflated into the same thing. And yeah, American Indian folks serve in the military at a disproportionate rate than any other ethnic group. And I'm curious, yeah, Navajo code talkers were the heroes of World War II. And how much is the American propaganda machine going to take full advantage of that to recruit the next generation of folks that are, economically disadvantaged?
Well, you bring up very great points.
And I'm sorry, brother, you had your hand up. Thank you for waiting.
Yeah, Mike.
Oh, I was just gonna say that you were talking about the book that you ordered, and I was wondering if they were gonna talk about the involvement. About the involvement for how we got into Iraq and everything, because one of the other reasons that we did go to Iraq was because of a source intelligence from this guy. They coded him his name was Curveball, and that was his code, like I said, his code name. And what happened was we had information from MI6 and the Germans, and they both said, hey, don't use this guy. His information is not worth it, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's just, they told us, like, this guy's information we validated it. It's not right. He kept going around and saying, hey, there's WMD in Iraq. There's WMD in Iraq. And, what happened was he finally came to the United States intel collectors, and, they finally got what they wanted to hear, which was WMD, and that's all that it took. And once they had finally heard that, they ran with it. And once that they ran with that information for WMD, that's what was the thing that kind of, kicked it all off. And yeah, we never found WMD in Iraq. And yeah, so.
Well, yeah, man, thank you so much for bringing this up, because it's important to think about, like, yeah, what are the root causes, and like, what was the British role in Iraq after the fall of the Ottoman Empire and the discovery of oil, and how did the Ba'ath Party and Saddam Hussein get into power, and where did their weapons of mass destruction in their war against Iran come from? Europe,
it was always us.
the United States. Yeah, exactly. What role did AIPAC and Israel have in the decision to invade Iraq? I'd be really curious to learn about that. And I think it is written about in this recently published book.
Well, we look forward to learning more in the future as we learn more. And I want to again thank you, Ryan, for taking the time, being honest, being vulnerable, and sharing your truth with us today. And to everybody who's watching, it is a unique experience that we have as veterans. And I thank you for sharing yours. It's been, I know it's enlightening for others because they don't understand our mentality, and I thank you for helping them get a grasp from your witnessing and your honesty so that they can come to understand it a bit better.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your hard work in this effort, all of you for showing up tonight. Thank you. Much love, Tone. And to the ancestors, to the descendants, to the four directions, to the creator, all of you, thank you. To all my teachers, my family, to the Blowback podcast.
I was about to say, do you have anything that you'd like to promote or talk about? This is your time.
Check out the Blowback podcast. They cover Korea, Cuba, Iraq, Afghanistan, Cambodia. And it really helped me unlearn a lot of the propaganda that I've been taught. My grandfather was with Chesty Puller at the Chosin Reservoir in Korea, and they both should have stayed home. We've really demonized the North, but we have a lot to learn about that. and we instilled a dictator in the South that ruled for decades. And working class conditions in South Korea are about as disparate as they are here for working class people in America. I think we have to, allow our heritage of GI resistance, from the Bonus Army to Vietnam to Standing Rock to Veterans for Ceasefire now, Sir No Sir and FTA are great films that can be found on Netflix that share that heritage of GI resistance to the war machine. Learn how we can really prevent the next war together.
Thank you, Ryan. Keep on doing what you're doing, and all the best to your people there at Compassionate Veterans. I would like to thank council members Mike Davis, Tony Landry, Wade Lefter, Leslie Fries, and Michael Krawitz is on the road. Safe travels to you, and I'm Etienne Fontaine. Thank you, everybody, for joining us tonight for V.A.C. Roundtable number 83 with the one and only Ryan Miller. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a great rest of your night.
Love.
The Veterans Action Council is a Pace Radio Network content provider.
You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
The opinions of the individuals during this broadcast are their own, and may not be the opinions of their group or other organizations they may be involved with. All medical advice during our broadcast is not a medical opinion and should be checked with your medical physician.
When you have a pain that's reached its peak, Legacy for 20, it's so unique. If organic cannabis is what you seek, here's your trusted partner 7 days a week. Suppository salves, vapes and drops, topicals, edibles, infused pop. Just when life seems like it ain't easy, at Legacy 420, enjoy a pop freezy. Lab tested products, make them the GOAT. Legacy 420 out on your road. Legacy 420 in Tyndonega Mohawk territory. Indigenous organic cannabis at its finest.
Enjoy the buzz of legalization with Campbellford Lifestyle Shop. From lights to plant nutrients, books, consumption accessories, and more, we've got all your basics to grow or consume cannabis. Visit our info center or take a look at our piercing services and body jewelry, now available in-store through Campbellford Lifestyle Shop, 17 Bridge Street West, Campbellford.
Limestone City Hydroponics is Kingston, Ontario's hydroponics shop. Take your growing to the next level and create the optimal environment with a tent kit, or maximize your yield with an ebb and flow flood table kit. Either way, Limestone City Hydroponics has more sizes and options to fit your needs. Are you looking for the power of the sun that adapts to your budget? Then look no further, as they have professional grow lighting. They have indoor grow systems that are easy and cost effective, with many options to fit your living space and lifestyle. Cultivate your growing potential. We have everything you need to succeed. And if you can't make it to the store, they offer local delivery to the greater Kingston area. Remember, when you're looking for experts to help you grow, then look no further than the locally owned Limestone City Hydroponics, 105 Sunderland Drive in Kingston, Ontario. Call them at 613-548-0420.
We are people advocating cannabis education here at paceradio.net.